King of Podcasts Radio Network proudly presents the Broadcasters Podcast, a weekly media commentary talking about traditional and digital media headlines and talking to the content creators out front and behind the scenes. Here is the King of Podcasts. Welcome to episode 154 of the Broadcasters Podcast. So thankful for all of you to go and join me tonight. I'm recording this just about an hour before Christmas Day begins at midnight. And we're going to talk over the next two episodes about the entire year 2020, the effect that we are at right now when it comes to the infamous digital disruption. Now, you know I've talked about this all year, and this has been the focus of the program. So here's the thing. Throughout this series, I've always talked about where when I've changed the name of the show, actually, I originally had it called Creative Not Corporate. It wasn't the best name for the show, but it did explain what my purpose for the show was in the first place. Is because there are a number of factors, of variables that come into this industry that have been changing things up for a long time. And it's not as if the traditional model of media could not work. But there's a reason why the digital disruption has come along basically over the last, 15 years plus, or actually more than the last 25 years. But more importantly, in the last 15 years for audio, and really in the last 10 years for video, when I really put the whole overview across. And what's happening is this affects everybody that is trying to make a living in the industry, including myself. As you might know, from the get-go, I started this program because I have an affinity for media and entertainment. I follow it constantly, especially the industry rags. I want to have an understanding of the whole industry when it comes to everything from music, movies, TV, and radio. And the people that are behind the scenes, the people that are creating this content, the underbosses that are really either hampering or hurting the creativity of the product that's out there. We see it across the board. When I have to go ahead and rant and rave about every different project being retooled, reimagined, or revisited, that's a problem. And we're getting that too much. And what's happening now is when you look at some of the new content that's out there, new digital platforms, and the content these new digital platforms are getting, they're getting rehashed content, or they're getting revisited content that's just going to be retooled, remastered, or reconsidered, right? They're going to be sequeled, or they're going to be reinterpreted, reimagined, recreated. And as we already know, why are we going to go back and recycle something that works so well? I mean, yes, there is a number of people that will say, okay, recycling something and bringing it back does do some good. I understand that part. And maybe there's times where once in a while you might do something that might be better than the original. But there should be a mix of a little bit of that, maybe bring back a little nostalgia, taking an original idea, bringing it back to the forefront because a new audience gets to consider it. And you need to also take the opportunity to use the new effects, the new technology to be able to make something even better, which is why when you look at Marvel and DC movies, you see the universe of anime, or you see other animation or other CGI-based projects, bringing them back into the forefront and then trying to recreate them again. Well, that makes some sense to me. I can understand why they're doing that because the technology has come back. Like when you want to see Superman again, or you want to see Wonder Woman recreated, or if you want to see, the Avengers, right? I can see what they're wanting to do there, taking it from the animation front and creating real life out of it. Disney, the same way, wanted to go ahead and get this so that it's a reattachment to a new audience. I get some of that. Star Wars, I also get some of that. That makes sense to me. But what doesn't make sense is when we can't do anything else but. And we're getting too much of that. It is the corporate mentality of, well, we know this works. We're just going to try it again. And for what? Why does it always have to be, let's just go back to the well, let's go back to the recycling bin, pull this back out, pull this original concept back out, and let's do it again. and let's do it again, and let's take this portion of it and put it into something else, and let's take this portion of it and do it to something again. Again, just nitpicking and piecemealing whatever you want out of a project that was very successful and just bastardizing it on a regular basis. Well, that might have worked for so long. But again, we're getting now into the decade of the 2020s. And I feel like the corporate entities that are out there, because of the consolidation, again, we had some major consolidation this year. Fox and Disney combining forces. And then what does happen? Well, there are layoffs. There's reimagining, restructuring of organizations, and people get let go, right? And then we have other things that are going on that are not predetermined, that are a rainy day. And of course, we always talk about saving for a rainy day, always planning for a rainy day. Well, we didn't have a rainy day. We had a monsoon. We had a once-in-a-lifetime superstorm in COVID-19. The pandemic changed everything. Now, it's not as if people couldn't be a little bit more courageous and say, you know what, let's persevere, let's get past all of this, and then we'll be able to go ahead and move forward with media entertainment like it was. But no, of course, some of these entities are fearmongers. Let's just call it what they are. They are fearmongers. That is your corporate media establishment. They are fearmongering. And even if it's not from the news aspect, they are using their content to keep you cognizant of what is going on around you. The reality of everything that's going on. Now they're going to just keep it as part of your lives, as if it's a real life dystopian front. Are people really looking forward to that? Is that what we really want? No. Well, we are here now. And we have been through this scenario right now for the last 9 months. Maybe more than that. Any form of media entertainment have been ultimately changed. But that's not so much what I'm worried about. Because the consumer is always smart. And the people that are behind the scenes that are doing great work, that are under the thumb of the C-level executives that are making all the decisions, which might not even be their decisions. They're making it at the behest of their stockholders, their shareholders, their investors, and probably some other entities we do not know about, but we could probably guess who they are. So with that said, people will not stay attached to the traditional modes or methods of consuming media. The traditional media that has been around since the beginning of television, the beginning of radio, the beginning of music, they're ultimately changing because they're going to go to the Wild West that is digital, which is a wide landscape, another universe. And the fault goes towards the establishment. The grounded, per unit style media of network television, cable television, music radio, radio in general, terrestrial radio, they're all suffering as a result. The music industry also suffering as a result. The movie industry greatly suffering as a result. And we have talked about that throughout this series. But the pandemic has truly escalated and accelerated more than ever the way media is consumed now, because the audience is going to go where they're going to want to go. They're not going to get forced to watch something that they're not happy with. And obviously, we're seeing more and more where the audience is willing to go ahead and spend money on premium content more than ever before, and they will leave in an exodus, a mass exodus away from content that was actually pretty easy to engage and watch. And that's what's going on. And people need to be aware of that, what's going on here, and realize, hey, corporate you're going to lose the fight here. And now you're changing your role because of a number of reasons. So digital is now the direction that where all the corporate owned media wants to go. Disney has made that point. Along with ABC, ESPN, Fox, and all their entities in between. That's one of the major companies, their direction. Viacom, CBS, that's their direction. NBC Universal, that's their direction. And there are many others. Decided to go the same route because they're going to go ahead and go into the fight when at a disadvantage against the likes of Netflix, Apple TV. Good luck. I wish you the best. Now, of course, with the power that some of these establishment, these corporate outlets have, they have a lot of money and revenue and a lot of resources, so they can go ahead and make their way in pretty quickly. And they have. But what are they going to do in order to keep themselves relevant? Because they're in new territory where they must be able to make money. They must become profitable. And they're putting all their eggs in it. And this is the risk they take. That is television. As for movies, you have to think about the fact of how we have the movie theaters have been shut down. And there's some that are open, but really the movie exhibition business is suffering greatly because several of the major movie chains are hurting badly right now. They're having to go and pull money to keep themselves afloat. They are hanging on. Their boats are getting leaks right now. They're trying to stop the leaks so that the ship does not drown. And that's where they are. These are the compromising factors that they're all dealing with right now. And so the movies, well, the studios are panicking. They need to get them out somewhere, somehow. They're not able to get all of them sold over to Netflix or Amazon Prime. Some of them they are. And they're taking a hit for it. So they're going to just find a way. They have to make money back on their movies. And with such a crowded year of movies next year on the slate, well, they're going to have to find a way to get there. I mean, I don't know how they're going to pull next year out. But remember, it's not even in some cases in their control. It's because the states and the politicians in those states are continuing a power grab. California and New York specifically are under such draconian measures right now where it's quite a bit of hypocrisy going on, where there might be some Hollywood setups that are being done right now. Some productions being done, but some of it cannot. I mean, you can't even go to Canada, go to Vancouver, I guess, right now, so much to continue to go ahead and produce. I guess there's some places that are. Production is back on board. But again, the viewing public, the people that you want spending dollars on this, they can't. But they're considering, you know what, maybe they're going to go ahead and invest and say, you know what, we'll go ahead and get them with the subscriptions and get them on a premium price. Maybe we can have them be more adjusted to watching new content from home in their little pods. Well, I don't want it to be that way. I don't like the fact I'm going to watch Wonder Woman 1984 from home. Now, I could go watch it in a movie theater, but it's a bit of a hassle right now. The movie theaters don't want to have showings anywhere past 9 o'clock at night. So the nights of me watching at 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night, those are gone right now. We don't have those. And then I also don't have the amount of theaters to go to. And remember, they're all still going to be socially distanced because that's just the way they are. I'm not worried about the masks wearing that around, but I'm just saying that's what they're doing right now. And that sucks. But that's where we are all together with this. But again, I've lost the movie theaters for a while. Again, all I got to see a handful of movies in January and February, and then only Tenet. And that's all I got to see in the theaters this year. So I was very disappointed by not having that many movies. But again, sacrifice. Everything that's happening, I am not disputing what has happened around us. And people are succumbing to the virus that has caused this pandemic, that has been the bane of our existence for over 9 months. I get that part. I am not disputing that that's not real. But the reactionary behind all of this is what bothers me. And will people be satisfied with the vaccine enough to go ahead and say, let's get ourselves back to some normal production? Let's start working on things now. Let's get the masks off at some point next year, and let's start moving along with our lives. Knowing that we're going to have to live with this particular virus, just like a flu virus, just like anything else, it's not going to get flattened and go away. We're going to learn that this is something that we need to make sure that we are aware of, that we do not succumb ourselves to, and it will be something that we can actually manage to deal with in our lifetimes. We have to be able to understand this is a part of life that's going to be here. That's just reality, and that's okay. There have been other diseases that have come and gone, other viruses that have come and gone, and then we just deal with them. And that's just how it is. So we'll find a way through this. And so the media and entertainment industry need to find their way through this as well. Because number one, they need to continue to create content for themselves. The machine needs to keep rolling for all these corporate entities to go. And they're the ones most responsible for what's going on here. Listen, if they want to go lose to everybody else, they're about to. Because right now, they're making some rash decisions at the sacrifice of their traditional outlets. So I don't know what they're going to be able to do between now and then, but this is where we're coming from. This is what the focus is going to be for the next 2 episodes. I will not have any interviews this week or next week. I don't want to put them out over Christmas and New Year's. I figured let's just do this. But most importantly, I wanted to keep doing content. More than anything else, that's the one thing I don't want to do. Unlike other media entities that will just take this time off. No, yours truly, King of Podcasts, is still here. I've been cranking out content this whole holiday season. I'm not stopping. Nothing's holding me back from doing this. I'm still working what I'm doing my work. I'm still a workaholic as I am, and I can't help myself. I just want to be able to do this content. It's very important to me. And there's a lot of content I've put together and procured that have been coming out from the media. A lot of industry rags have come out and started making their comments. And I want to take some of those tonight and next week, and then just continue to run through those over 2 parts. So we begin with part 1 of what I am calling 2020, when corporate media was broken by the digital disruption. Part 1 and part 2. Part 1 we begin right now is this. So Bloomberg Quint.com, they put out a story, and this is Perry Ravindranathan. I'm sure I said that right. He says the 2020 in review is an unforgettable year in media. So he kind of goes through a whole different trudge through this. Let's go ahead and take a few things of where he comes in, right? He says the media and entertainment industry will probably come out looking very different next year, 2021, in both the way the content is produced and consumed. I attempt to sum the changes in the state of the industry as we count down the last days of the year. He prefaces the fact he subscribes now to 5 streaming platforms and bought into each one of them to watch something specific and then stuck on. Now, for myself, when I think about what I have in terms of streaming content, I have Netflix, Amazon Prime, HBO Max. That's what I have right there. And then I have cable. For my music, I have Spotify. And if I want to stream radio, I can go to TuneIn, or I can go to, mostly TuneIn is what I use. It's what my preference is. And then for podcasting, it just depends. But Google Podcasts is usually my go-to for things. And then I watch a lot of YouTube videos. That's where most of my streaming comes from. So one of the things he mentions is the real race will be among the ones left standing once the binge watching comes to an end and people step back into the sunlight. Till then, a lot of cash will be burnt and a lot of amazing content created. So here is what he says about streaming. To stream or not to stream? It's definitely not an optional question anymore, but a necessity. And that's what it's become now. I'm going to say that myself. Streaming more than ever, it is part. If you thought that the pendulum swing for people kind of testing the waters of streaming content and just having a Netflix subscription and just flipping from, traditional television or cable to streaming. Well, that's gone now. Streaming is in. It is the major player right now. Just in the last few weeks, we've seen an incredible change in the way media companies are looking at the future. Walt Disney threw its significant might and muscle into a streaming platform after a year of pain for all its core businesses. In an investor interaction a few days ago, which we reported here, Disney said it was targeting 230 to 260 million subscribers by 2024 for Disney Plus. Check that number one more time. 230 to 260 million subscribers. They basically want 65-70% of the entire American audience. But of course, that might be more of a global audience right there. But still, that's a lot of damn people. That's a lot of subscribers. Now, they own Hulu, ESPN Plus, and elevated the Star brand as its international streaming platform. So they have, we talked about already, pretty detailed. I didn't talk about it so much here on this program, but in my When I'm Not Podcasting series, I'll make sure to go and look for a link for that so I can add that into the description so you can go and catch what I said about all of the new content that Disney Plus is coming out with. I put that out into a When I'm Not Podcasting series. Let me go look for the link. I'll put that into the description. Broadcasterspodcast.com. You can find it there. At the moment, they already have 86 million subscribers in the first few months of launching. So it is clear the future adventures of the Magic Kingdom are going to be streamed, not televised nor shown in a theater near you. And that's what they're doing. And this is what's important, is we're seeing some of the major corporate entities making the rash decision to stream. They're going to trust streaming. They're going to put their money and their mouth where they are with streaming and make whatever money they can. AT&T's Warner Media doing something similar. All film offerings in 2021 heading straight to HBO Max. Same time as theatrical releases. We'll get to see that as I record tonight with Wonder Woman 1984, which already did take a little buckle at the box office internationally, so they're hoping a lot of people are going to get their eyeballs on this. Will they get enough? And again, this is a loss leader in a way because this is to get people subscribing to HBO Max. When they're not going to have all these big major movies coming out at the same time, they're hoping people are going to pay $14.99 a month for this. But they're not even going to do what Disney does, which charges an additional price. I know they did that for Mulan. They're putting out the movie Soul as well Christmas Day. I don't know if that is an additional price along with it. I haven't checked that yet. Just went ahead and looked it up real quick. So Soul is going to be available inside of the normal $6.99 monthly price for Disney Plus, which, by the way, by March will be increasing by $1 to $7.99. So there we go. I didn't realize that, but yes, they are actually going to put it part of Disney Plus, and they're not going to charge extra money. Because Mulan, they already had charged an extra $30 via Disney Plus Premier Access. But what they're going to be doing is there will be select movies that will become Premier Access. At their Investor Day presentation, Disney leadership revealed that Raya and the Last Dragon will be receiving a similar release as Mulan on March 5th. It will go in theaters, and it will be on Disney Plus Premier Access, which means you'll be able to be a Disney Plus subscriber and pay an additional purchase fee if you want to watch the film at home. Mulan cost $30, which included unlimited paybacks, but has not been confirmed how much Disney will pay for Raya or charge of the Raya and the Last Dragon, but they're expecting a number closer to $20. And there are 3 other films that are previously set for theatrical release that'll be rerouted to Disney Plus proper as well. Keep that in mind. Now, there are some movies at the moment that are going to still be pushed out regularly to theaters for the Disney Plus end. That'll be Black Widow, which is scheduled to still go out May 7th, and Jungle Cruise, which includes Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and Emma Blunt. That's in July 30th. So we're still hoping that we might get something where we'll get some of this content back in the theaters, and then maybe there'll be a change. But again, The rash decision is rash because Warner Media is only doing this for 2021. They have not said this is going to be going forward after 2021. Not as of yet, but that can always change. Now, picking virtual reality and incorporating new dimensional technologies. The pioneer chief disruptor among all streaming right now is still Netflix, which had a landmark year. They added, thanks to the pandemic, an additional 26 million subscribers in the first half of the year, and will have more than 200 million paying subscribers watching programs like The Queen's Gambit and The Crown stuck at home. In the meantime, Apple TV, Amazon Prime, Google, and Facebook are all aggressively acquiring, creating content, and expanding globally as well. In the meantime, YouTube TV taking a step back on the content end and being more of just an aggregator, providing a place to watch content via Google and their devices. So with all these entertainment platforms thriving, they go in the news, and we're not going to go in the news right now. The journalism end is going to be for a different part. We'll take that later on. So we'll come back to that. If we want to come back to that story, I'll come back to that as well. So one of the things we need to look at is television. Network television and cable television, and what will happen. Because if the streaming's coming into play, what does that mean for them? As we mentioned, the movies, we already understand that we're going to see this kind of transition right now of simultaneous releases. Got that. But that's only for 2 major studios. We do not know what that means for the rest of the studios out there. But we will wait. But again, we already talked about there are so many movies that are scheduled to go out next year that if the vaccinations are out there for people to get and cases start coming down and people start feeling more comfortable to get out and things change among the governments where a little more reopening of the economy comes back into play, then maybe we'll get back into movies once again. But as we said, Christmas Day, we're going to have 4 new movies coming out with wide releases, so there will be that. But again, the way the movies are coming out will not be as it was. Again, we're going to have a lot of changes here. And with that said, going into January and February and others, we're going to continue to see several rare wide releases, but for the most, they're all limited or virtual. And that's what's going to be happening for the most part. When I look at movies that are coming out, January is quiet. But again, January and February are usually quiet months for movies anyway. So there's not much that's going to come back from that. I mean, unless there were some Oscar-nominated movies, but we don't know any of those right now. We don't know what's going to be going on in movie theaters exhibiting at this time going into January and February. So there are some movies coming out wide release into February. But at the moment, the next big run of wide releases comes out February 26th. Because then we start seeing several wide releases going out on a regular basis. And that's how it continues to go going into March. March just has a big month of movies where they're going to have things coming out. Raya and the Last Dragon, the Disney animated film. The King's Man, The Many Saints of Newark, the Sopranos prequel. Morbius, the sequel to The Boss Baby, are all going to be coming out in March. No Time to Die is still scheduled for April. Bob's Burgers, the movie. A Quiet Place Part 2, also in April. Then you have Black Widow in May. You have Godzilla vs. Kong in May. You have Cruella by Disney in May. F9, the Fast Saga, Fast and Furious in May. June, Conjuring, another one. Ghostbusters Afterlife. Venom, Let There Be Carnage. That's all in June. In July, you have Top Gun Maverick, The Forever Purge, the new Space Jam, Jungle Cruise in July, then Hotel Transylvania 4 in August, Suicide Squad as well, Deepwater, The Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard, another Jackass, Death on the Nile. That's September. October, another Addams Family animated. Snake Eyes G.I. Joe Origins. Dune, also in October. Moving on, Elvis. Clifford the Big Red Dog, animated, wide release. Mission Impossible 7. Also coming up. And then December next year, we're expecting Matrix 4, West Side Story. And there are still a number of movies that have yet been slated to come out, but there are so many ready to go and come out that are also in the mix. So again, a big year for movies, but what will happen to those? Again, exhibition will have a chance to see movies, but right now, the movie theaters need to try to be able to hold off and stay fluid through February. And then hopefully, maybe by March, we start seeing some reopenings back up with social distancing. Maybe we'll get back to that. And some people will start feeling more comfortable to get back out, and the vaccinations will have been effective. We can only hope. Now, Neiman Lab put out some predictions for journalism. There's a whole bunch of them. I didn't go through all of them. Some of them had obviously some pretty bold predictions and commentary. One of them I wanted to take was from M. Scott Havens, Chief Growth Officer and Global Head of Strategic Partnerships for Bloomberg Media, that I thought had an interesting take on everything. Traditional pay TV will embrace the disruption. The new TV is here, and in 2021, I expect a seismic shift of advertising dollars to it. So traditional pay TV remains a big business. While ad revenue is expected to be down some 15% in the U.S., advertisers are still expected to spend $60 billion on TV spots this year. By year's end, multi-channel video programming distributors are expected to generate $210 billion in service revenue and reach over 60% of households worldwide. So these particular streaming services that are out there, 60% of households worldwide will be definitely. The TV business has long and successfully worked to shield itself from disruption. Indeed, networks continue to increase the monthly carriage fees they charge for access to their content, but millions of consumers continue to cut the cord every year. Ultimately, the cracks in traditional pay TV's foundation cannot withstand the pandemic. So right now, we know that NBC is going all in on Peacock. CBS has launched CBSN and All Access. But again, they're about to be Paramount Plus coming up in the new year. Fox bought Tubi, which is like a Pluto TV type service where they have a lot of different movie and TV content. ESPN and Discovery have tailored options for streaming, and there are other options coming out over the top. The new TV is here, and while many initially lamented the digital transition and branded the unwelcome shift as trading dollars for dimes, the fact is that audience has already chosen digital as their platform. So it's not a matter of like, oh, we're not going to make that much money once the transfer is over, so why are we going to, put our resources and all our eggs in a basket now? Well, now they have no choice because the pendulum has already swung that direction. That's what he's saying. But these same entities foresaw and shifted their focus to mobile platforms once smartphones arrived. Yeah, somewhat. Not really that well, but I understand what he's trying to say. He's trying to give him a kind of a thing. Mobile platforms were trying to perhaps too swiftly into streaming audio to take advantage of the eventual extinction of terrestrial radio. Yet I still think terrestrial radio has a place in media, but we need an implosion of the corporates to unload those stations, which I hope comes this year, coming up. That would be really nice. We'll talk about iHeartMedia and see how the other companies are doing and see what will happen to them going forward. Those that didn't and haven't run fast enough in the digital disruption are gone, acquired, or struggling. Well, struggling is the word for the traditional outlets of network television and others. Now, let me take the story this is another story that comes into play about the end of TV's relentless growth. Peak TV. From Variety.com, they put the story out. we were getting a whole lot of shows being produced, remember? We had a whole lot of content. The peak TV phenomenon, the number of TV shows being produced each year for 13 years straight, is over. COVID-19 shutting down the industry mid-year. There was a total of 1,577 scripted and unscripted adult shows airing a new series across broadcast, cable, and free and paid streaming services. Represents the first time since the Writers Guild strike of 2007-2008, where a year has seen fewer shows than the prior one. So we had that big drop this year. Down by 43 shows, or 2.7%. Is a stunning drop for cable. While many TV companies are opting to shift resources to new streaming services, the pandemic amplified what was a planned cutback, with new series on cable cut down by 193 shows across the spectrum. Subscription streaming services, boosted by the introduction of HBO Max, Peacock, and Quibi, and the first full year of Disney Plus and Apple TV Plus, saw increases of more than 164 new series. So cable drops all those shows, and then all the streamers are adding new shows. So the pendulum swings even more. So people are going to go where the content's at, where the new shows are. That's what they're going to do. Now, there are other, in the analysis they're doing right here, they put some stats together, and they considered so much. So one of the things I noticed about some of this was that a lot of the reality content got shut down, which is not a bad thing. But a lot of scripted shows were still more important than anything else. Now, Netflix still is the largest individual U.S. provider. They have survived because they got the influx of so many new subscribers to their platform to make up for the billions and billions of dollars in content that they did. Apple TV the same way. So I don't know if they would have been able to make that kind of jump like they did if they were going to fall apart, but they're not now. Netflix is in good shape. They probably just are looking now to get content, but now they're not the only game in town when it comes to content, because the corporates are also going to have their networks out there. We're now in a full-fledged competition, but Netflix is still far and ahead the top dog. They just have to keep finding a way to keep doing that. Now, what their issue is, which is now a new problem. Well, it wasn't so much a new problem, but it was a problem they already knew they had. They just had to find a way to keep going. Is that some of the older content that came from other networks got picked up by their prospective networks for their new platforms, and so they had to go ahead and continue to put content out there. So they're not using so much older content anymore. Now they're definitely focused on new content, and that's what Netflix has. Along with their normal lineup of original shows, they're just finding a way to get more original shows out there, get them produced, and hopefully continue that way. So that's where television goes in this direction. And I can appreciate what they're trying to say right there. Now, one of the other stories I want to also focus here before we move along that I think is very interesting is there are other areas. Now, next week when we do the show, I want to also talk about, I'm going to go into the area of the music industry. I want to get into the journalism and the news area of where things are going on. I want to talk about where social media has jumped into the mix as well, and the change of music and radio as it stands now going into 2021. I want to talk all about that. So we're going to go into all of that and see what's going on there. I think that's going to be something very important to discuss. So one of the things that really is taking away from a younger audience that I think is very fascinating, story from the New York Post, they put out that video game revenues in 2020 are set to top sports and movie industries. So there was still money being spent on. But then what happens is we get to this point of, okay, we have something else that's really standing out among younger consumers of media. They're going to video games. This is an interesting story, and keep this in mind. Keep an eye on this. We see how much is spent on advertising and how much is consumed in terms of, with new platforms like PS5 and Xbox, their next iteration. They continue to keep going, and they are perfect for in-home content and for interaction as well. And you also have to understand that the media that gets done with this. YouTube and Twitch, they're making a killing right now, providing content of people doing watch-alongs of all these video games being played. Keep that in mind as well. So with that said, the video game industry is set to exceed the revenue brought in by sports and movie combined. And it's, of course, fueled by the pandemic making new gamers out of stuck-at-home citizens. Global video game revenue is up 20% in 2020 and will finish the year at an eye-watering $180 billion, according to data from IDC. That figure beats the pre-coronavirus $100 billion that movies brought in 2019 and $75 billion that sports brought in. And unlike sports and movies, which were both hit hard this year by the shuttering of stadiums and theaters, video games have only seen their popularity increase as people have looked for new ways to pass the time. Nintendo recently reported that sales of its Switch and Switch-like consoles climbed up 80% between April and September. They're expected to move 24 million units in its fiscal year ending in March. 24 million units. One of the games that was featured, Animal Crossing, has already sold more than 26 million units, on pace to be the biggest selling Nintendo Switch game ever. That's a big money. And it's not just Nintendo capitalizing. Sony and Microsoft have both released their next generation consoles for the new year, for Christmas time. PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X. Their sales have been overwhelming to the point where Walmart and Amazon have been unable to keep them in stock. And desperate gamers are turning to online auctions like eBay, willing to pay more than double of the console's $500 price tag to snag one. In an interview with MarketWatch, IDC's Lewis Ward says he doesn't see a slowdown of video game sales anytime soon. He says, I do think there will be a deceleration as soon as the effective, cheap, globally available vaccines get out there. But by the end of 2021, there will still be billions of potential people that will need vaccines. So deceleration happens in 2022. So some of the audience has broken off, and they're living in the world of escapism in video games, where there are no masks, there's no social distancing. It's just make-believe. It could be a dystopian fantasy, sure. It could be just complete make-believe. But that says a lot about what's going on here. And of course, corporate entities are out there putting this content out, and the likes of Sony, Microsoft, Nintendo doing their own thing as well, making themselves well back into the game once again. So you have that going on for everybody. And you got to say to yourself, you know, where did the traditional media go wrong? Why weren't they prepared for this? When you look at the seasons of television and what they're doing, they're not doing well. So we know that cable programming has definitely been hurt by what's been going on now. We're looking right now at the 13th week of the new season of network television. So here's what we got so far. The numbers are horrible, okay? 60 Minutes holds one of the top as a news show at 11.2 million viewers. But again, that's following football. So the overrun. You have shows like This Is Us getting 7 million viewers. The Masked Singer getting 6 million viewers. Now, of course, there is the 18 to 49-year-old demographic that everybody talks about, which is what is the real number that's considered altogether. But again, the overall audience we still want to look at as well. Look at the older audience that's going on right now that's watching television. Okay, NCIS, which used to get in odds of like 30 million viewers, right now we're at 9 million viewers, almost 10 for their series, down 17% this year. The FBI on CBS, 7.7 million viewers, down 14%. Young Sheldon, 7.1 million viewers, under 10 million viewers. There's not one show on the lineup here at all that makes over 10 million viewers, period. Not a one. And to think there are some shows that if you put them on right now that you can look at across the board on the lower end of programming that might get 1 million viewers at the most. Now, I don't know if those viewers also include their streaming or not, but again, that's where we are. The numbers are so bad. And for some of the shows that have been around for such a long time, you just see the year-to-year change. It's just considerable. Dancing with the Stars used to get 20 million viewers in its heyday. Now, 6 billion viewers. The Chicago shows on NBC, Chicago Fire, 7.5 million. Chicago PD, 6.4 million. That's where we are. Grey's Anatomy, 5.8 million, and that's been around forever. Very few shows are on the swing up. Most of them are on the way down. That's just how it is. That's where it is. So, network TV continues to fail. And what I really want to know coming up soon is what happens in network TV? What's their purpose of the primetime lineups into 2021? When you have a continuously degrading audience, a devolving audience on a regular basis. It's eroding, week after week. What happens next to them? We don't know. But overall, these are issues that have not been considered. Again, some of the reasons why we're not watching some of these shows is because they decided to go ahead and inject the pandemic into our programming. And you can see with some of the shows that did that, you can tell that they didn't do well. Station 19, which did really well off last year, down 10%. The Neighborhood, which is also featured that, down 17%, 18 to 49, 12% overall viewers. The Connors have affected this as well, down 29.83%. Remember when Roseanne brought the show back on, had like 12 million viewers? Or no, 16 million viewers? And then it went to, it kind of leveled off at 12 million viewers. They're not even getting that now. They're not even getting a third of it now, like they did. The Amazing Race used to get great ratings. Now it's under 4 million viewers. What other shows do we have that might also be including the pandemic here? We mentioned NCIS, which is down 17%, 25% down among 18 to 49. So people are not responding to the pandemic in your face continuing on our network TV. We just don't care about it. Plus, if you're watching programming that's on and you're saying, we're seeing the shows being watched and then trying to go ahead and get ourselves watching programming where we have all the issues of, trying to watch programming that is in social distancing mode. All your morning shows, all your talk shows, some game shows that CBS offers, and how they're doing right now and how they're putting it together. So there's a lot to unravel that happens next year. And so this is where the biggest corporate grab comes from. It's from all the visual content. Because that's what we're actually talking about. It's all the visual content that we're watching. Now, it does not include YouTube or Facebook or Instagram or other video outlets that are social media based. We're not talking about those. But overall, there's a lot to be said right now that people should be considering and should be concerned about. Now, we knew there was going to probably be some hits to certain outlets of where we get our entertainment. I mean, some, really have been hurt badly. We've talked about that in some of the interviews we've had featured on the program. When we talked to Lauren Collin, or we talked to, we talked about the whole Broadway scene still being out for the next 18 months at least. Where they're not even going to try to sell tickets, going into 2021. We're still trying to get ourselves off the ground when it comes to travel. Being able to travel internationally. Being able to travel just anywhere. Being able to go ahead and, go out of our way to go and catch entertainment. Whether it was live music or concerts or sporting events. We don't even have that yet. We're still waiting for all that to come back. At the moment, we're getting some entertainment. We're getting some other content out there for us to view on our screens. But not that we can go out to go see ourselves on location at the venues. We don't have that yet. We don't have sound stages or studios to go watch shows and a studio audience necessarily. Not so much of the late night shows, which are not doing that well. Same thing for the shows that might be daytime, you're watching them on Zoom calls. I mean, one of the things I have to consider as well is all those kind of programs that are day-to-day programs, you just can't expect them to stay like that forever. People are not going to just want to be adjusting themselves and normalizing watching Zoom calls or watching people on video calls on a regular basis. I don't think that's going to stay like that forever. People are not going to keep wanting to watch that. I know that because I'm watching wrestling, professional wrestling, which I do a show on called the Wrestling is Real podcast, right? And I talk about the same thing. And I mentioned the fact of how with that programming, there's a couple of shows that do have some live audiences sprinkled throughout. One of them I'm watching called All Elite Wrestling, which is on TNT. The other ones are the WWE. And they have their shows on USA and on Fox, two prominent channels. But they do not have an audience there. They are watching through Zoom video calls around the arena in what is called the Thunderdome. It's a kind of a virtual scenario where they could have piped-in crowd noise, and they have the people watching on the televisions, on their computer screens, engaged in the action. Is it really doing much? Well, the numbers in their ratings are also not been doing great year to year. Meanwhile, AEW, or All Elite Wrestling, has had a considerable increase because they have been able to try to inject some kind of an audience interaction throughout. So they have a crowd that does actually respond to their content. But we're not getting into that for other shows. These are things that have to be considered and have to be pondered here as we go into next year. And with that, I'm going to go and close out part one of my year-end look into what I've called the breaking of corporate media by the digital disruption. Because it is that. It's big media that is getting hurt by this. And what are they doing to actually trying to work this out? So we've talked right now about network television, cable television, movies. We went into all that. And we talked about on the other visual end where video games are becoming a replacement to some of this programming. So we'll leave that all there. Next week, we will talk about journalism. We'll talk about music. We will talk about social media. And we will talk about radio. That's all coming up next week here on the Broadcasters Podcast. I wish all of you a very good Christmas weekend. Merry Christmas. And if you don't catch my episode beforehand, Happy New Year, Happy Holidays to all of you out there. I hope you're having the greatest of times and having a great holiday season. Stay safe. Remember that content is your king. Content is king, excuse me. Content is king. Content is king, and the control of your content is in your hands.
Thank you for listening to the Broadcasters Podcast. Find all the links and subscribe to the show by going to broadcasterspodcast.com. And don't forget to check out the King of Podcasts wrestling program, the Wrestling is Real podcast, exclusively at wrestlingisreal.com.